Jackson, welcome. Great to have you here.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a long journey to get here for this.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Brilliant, good stuff. I think let's get started at the beginning, shall we? A lot of people, play sport when they're young, but not many people go on to play with the Saracens or any sport team for that matter. What got you into rugby, and kind of what drove the success in rugby for you?
It's a question obviously you get quite a bit. I think it was probably at school when I was sort of 12, 13. I didn't actually know what rugby was, to be honest. I grew up in an area that wasn't big in rugby. And the school I went to, it was one of the major sports there. So I remember my old teacher now, I joke with him a little bit because he basically said, well, if you want to play football, you have to try rugby. So he honestly was really trying to get me to play because I was one of the bigger kids at school. I was quite fast, etc. So he said, I want you to try and play it. And I started then at about 13, which is quite late, actually.
Yeah,
I mean, my kids now play already, and they play since they were 6, right? So I got involved quite late. And then the journey from starting to then getting through basically was around sort of county rugby. So you play well for your club, and you get picked up by counties. My club was Westcliff. Or picked up by county, played in county competitions and things. And the Saracens coaches had Middlesex, Essex and Hertfordshire and Kent were their areas.
Yeah.
So they looked at those counties when they were playing. And then I got invited at 14, 15 to join the junior academy at Saracens, like training every Tuesday night and up in Hertfordshire. And my mum was a saint looking back because she drove me up there every week on a Tuesday night. It's an hour and a half journey there, an hour and a half back. So she really, basically made it happen because I wouldn't have been able to make it otherwise. So, so that was the main thing. And I think looking back from there onwards, it was a bit of a blur, to be honest. But really, it was hit a milestone, get a contract, keep going, get another one. And I lived it basically contract to contract because it was like nothing's ever guaranteed.
Yeah.
And then before I know it, it's 18 years later, and I'm still there. Yeah. And then I call it a day at 32, which is kind of probably quite young actually in many ways. But it was some journey. Yeah.
So were there any points like during that journey? Because obviously, even as a kid, there must have been a lot of distractions, and obviously as you got older, everything from girls and God knows what else, going out and partying. Were there ever times where you thought, actually, I've had enough of this, so, not necessarily in it, or were you kind of like, that's it, I've got to do this?
To be honest, I didn't really think of it. Obviously, when I was growing up, I did have to move. So I moved at 16. I moved to Hertfordshire and lived in a academy house and went to college up there and everything. So that helped, I think. I took myself out of helped, and it was quite tough, obviously. My school sort of friend group, I then moved out of that when they all started to do all that stuff. So, but at the same time, then I went to a like-minded group of people and lived with them. And and I say this a lot, actually, the difference between business and sport, and the challenge. One of the big challenges, I think, is the personalities that you work with in rugby and sport in general are all aligned. So whether you're the physio, the doctor, the coach, the intern, the player, the academy, it doesn't matter. Like, you're all pushing for one thing because you know what it is. In the business world, you get different responsibilities across a business that are wired differently, are motivated differently.
For sure.
And yes, they're obviously trying to make the business better, but it's not as tangible as sport. Even yesterday, I was chatting to someone who used to be a physio at a football club, Premier League football club, and she said she struggled with that sport mindset to being a physio externally, so like a private physio, for example, because there isn't that alignment in mindset. And I think that when I moved there, that was then, everyone I was around, I lived with players, I went into the training ground. I suppose I went to university as well, which is a bit different, but actually gave me a nice balance to things, just somewhat different. But everything was coming back to winning, high performance, getting better. Yeah. So that's what I was living with every day. It doesn't mean we weren't going out and having a good time as well. Yeah. We were doing that, but very much that was on the edge of things rather than being the focus.
The central core. Yeah. So it sounds like actually being in a group of people who are all on the same mission, that made a big difference in terms of your motivation, your ability to kind of strive forward and be better in rugby and continue in your career. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the. I mean, I was a good player, don't get me wrong, but actually the players that were around me motivated me just because of the way they were, the way they trained, the way they acted.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I say a lot that my group of players in the academy were special. Jamie George, now captain of England, or was captain of England now, he's still playing for England. Owen Farrell was in my age group.
Wow.
George Cruz, I mean, British Lions, these guys. And I grew up with them from 14, 15. So, and there was a lot of players around that played at a high level as well. It's, I think I was very fortunate to have that as well.
Yeah.
And we just, motivated each other. We drove each other to get better. So yeah, living and breathing that every day, even though it wasn't the first team, this is the academy side.
Yeah.
It definitely had a massive impact on our chances of playing at the top level, to be honest. So they dragged me through.
No, it's interesting what you say as well about the contrast between business and playing sport and that kind of group of people all working towards the same goal. And you hear a lot about that in like the startup world, where very successful startups, the team works really well together, the people work really well together, and they're able to drive something forward that may have been extremely difficult to do. Maybe as the company gets bigger and things become more siloed, there's a lot of different people, a lot of different fighting agendas, all that kind of thing, and then it kind of moves away from that kind of sport. Is that kind of what you've seen, or?
It's quite fresh at the moment because again, where I'm working at the moment it's a big project about we have grown. Like, let's be honest, like the reason that startups become good businesses is because the founders have a disproportionate impact on the business, right? So they drive everything. They're typically involved in everything, which is great. But then as you get to that size, it's really the challenge, I think, is the almost the dissemination of that control and trust. You have to, as you grow to a 10-person business, a 20, a 30, a 40, a 50, the silos do appear because it's inevitable. But it's how hard are you working to make sure that the gap between each silo and how connected are they? Because you do then gaps do occur. You're again in compliance or in operations or in finance or whatever, like across the business, they're very different people, which is why they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
To be good at what I do is completely the opposite of thing to be good at the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fine. But I suppose it's having an awareness of it, saying, yeah, that's okay. Because in rugby you have, yes, we're all pushing in the same direction, but you've got, different, probably less different, I'd say, in like physios and the doctors and the coaches and things.
Yeah.
I say the gap between sort of one person and another is the extremities, if you like, is much tighter, and in the business world, it's much bigger. So that's also okay. You need them.
Yeah.
So it's how I think the difference really has been the awareness of it. One thing that's amazed me actually is the lack of actually focus on that.
Yeah.
And not as it's a bad thing or a good thing, but it's knowing it's there and then trying to do something about it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you keep doing your thing and you get outcomes at the end, but you're leaving something on the table, I think.
Yeah.
And in rugby you had it just because it was sport and you had the common ground, but it's really trying to make what is that goal very clear to everyone.
But it sounds like some of the team elements actually are kind of similar, but then at the same time it's this, I guess it's a little bit more unified and a little bit more, everyone's kind of a little bit more focused on like one project as opposed to many different things that are going on. Maybe that's subtle differences, I guess.
I mean, another thing which is very different in I call it the real world to sport is you have, your feedback loop is so tight.
Yeah.
You train, you get feedback. You play on a weekend, you win or you lose. Yeah. At the end of the season, you win or you don't. In business world, there's so much longer. You don't know if you leave the office one day. Yeah. How did I do? Because there is no. You might have a self, regulating way of doing that, but actually, there's no one saying to you, right, you train well today. There's no one doing that.
Yeah.
And actually, at the end of the week, there isn't a game. There's no way you can test yourself against a team with a scoreboard and a ticking clock. So really, it's about really trying to take what that does give you, I think, in sport, you know, having that end game or the season or a competition or a trophy to win. Yeah. And what is that trophy on a daily basis? You know, like that's basically what I'm trying to bring in is, so when you come into the office and when you leave, you've left it in a better place than when you found it. That kind of mindset. But what is that? You know, like, so we've done a bit around defining what that is, actually. It's ultimately around the culture and the values of the place. So can I walk out the door knowing that I've lived up to those values every day? And actually if you do that, then we'll be all right.
It makes sense.
But it's challenging. It's not easy.
Do you think it's mentally harder to do that in the business world because you don't have those obvious, I guess, goals, or it's not quite as straightforward as, yes, we're playing a game at the end and it's a win or lose situation. Sometimes things are a little bit more grey in business. Does that make it harder from a sort of mental preparedness point of view?
I think so. I think in different parts of the business, I think you've got like a sales role, for example, or something with targets in it. Yeah, it's probably a bit easier.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But actually around the roles that are more sort of power engine based, you know, so operations and you know, in finance, middle back office and compliance, you know, what is a win for them? Yeah, it's quite, you know, but that's something that we need to understand. And is it that they come in and they live by the values and they do that, and that might be it, you know, but that's good as well. But it is hard to find for everyone to have that. And I think it does come back to the gap between sort of the culture where we are now to where the end goal is, and everything in between it is incredibly important. Yeah. And a lot of people focus on the end. I mean, I joke about this a bit, but you show me a company that's come to the end of its 5-year strategy, and I would laugh because there isn't one. You know, no one makes it to the end of a 5-year strategy. So there's always things that happen along the way. And I think it's just about going, well, okay, we do want to go there. That's fine. But actually the journey there could go loads of different ways, but we know kind of how we're going to get there. Like there's no 5-year plan that's going to go perfectly. So yeah, I'm a sort of firm believer in, you know, having a short-term horizon to go, right, well, we are going over here, but that's fine. But how do we get there in the short term? So what things do we need to do, put in place that we can, you know, do, check, is it working? No, okay, we'll change it, tweak it, then go again. But yeah, it does amaze me when they come out of a big long-term strategy when they have no idea what's going on in the next 12 months. And
as humans, we don't work very well like that. We tend to be better if you can see something a little bit closer and work towards it first. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. And actually, you're already touching on my next question actually around, you know, things that you brought or have brought from sport into business. So just interested to know what's the kind of key lessons or learning that you kind of learned during that 18 years in rugby that you pretty much use and operate with today, even in business or even in family for that matter?
Yeah. To be honest, I mean, I think the family side and all of it really, it's a way of being. To be honest, it's just a way of doing things. And I think some of the key learnings which you learned playing sport and actually is heightened really, is I suppose that one of the big things I always say is basically do what you say you're going to do. Seems pretty simple. You know, you say you're going to do something, do it.
Makes sense.
And actually, it isn't as common as you might think, to be honest. But in rugby, you get found out quite quickly. Yeah. I think that for me is the first one. I think the second one is the purpose I try and find. So I think when people retire from sport or they leave sport, the biggest thing they lose is purpose, because again, I said it a minute ago, is that you know why you're getting up every day. You know you're going to the gym, you're trying to get stronger, faster, fitter. You're trying to get better as a player to win on the weekend. You win more times in the season, you win at the end of the season, you have a trophy. And then it does reset, unfortunately. You know, then you've won a trophy and you're back to the start. But there is that purpose every day. So I think one thing I've tried to really give myself is a purpose. So find something which I get out of bed in the morning and I don't sort of crawl out of bed. I get out of bed because I'm looking forward to do it. Find something that's engaging, has length to it. You know, it isn't a massive sort of hamster wheel kind of thing. It's additive to the environment. So having that purpose and actually having an impact for me is important. Good. So those two, and then I think the one thing I try to do is do it with people you want to do it with, because you can have the best job in the world, you can get paid well, but if you do it with people you don't want to do it with, it becomes incredibly difficult. So I spent a lot of time trying different things with different kinds of people, and actually if you find something which is, gives you purpose and you're doing it with people that you want to be around, it's incredibly helpful, to be honest, because that's basically what I had the whole time.
Yeah.
I enjoyed rugby. We were successful. I did it with people I wanted to do it with, and I was driven to, because of those two things. Actually, you do what you say you're going to do, because it's a game of respect at the end of the day. So you leave the place. I said it before about you leave it in a better place than you found it. Yeah. Really, it's leave. And if you weren't respect, it's easy to lose it. Have you earned more respect today than when you walked in the door? So that's how I try and sort of live, to be honest. And that's the same at home. The kids need to respect me at all, but they're I have to deliver on what I say, and if I say something, then I have to stick. Yeah. And again, you'd think it would be quite common, but actually I found that it's probably not. To be honest.
It requires so much more focus as well within sport than it does in business, and things can easily get busy. It can easily get distracting, and there's so many things going on in business, right? I think that lack of focus makes a difference. But you talked a little bit there about sort of purpose, or having a purpose to, for example, keep in shape or do your training. It's kind of like a given if you're in a sporting environment, but it's less so outside. And I've had a few conversations with different people, and everyone's kind of got their different approach to this sort of thing. For me, I always say these days, when I was younger, maybe my purpose to train in the gym or do something was maybe just to impress some girls or something like that, or just get a bit stronger. Yeah. So I was a bit skinny in those days. And then I guess now my purpose is more actually, how do I consistently exercise in a way and be healthy in a way that keeps me active, keeps me feeling good, and keeps my longevity really in the long run. So I guess purposes change over time, and everyone's got a different reason for what they do. But it sounds like you have do you still have a specific goal in mind when you're going to do exercise in the morning, or do you need to have something to focus on, or can you kind of just do it on a consistent basis, almost like, it's just like a breathing?
Well, I think coming out of sport, you lose a few different things actually. I say lose, but it tapers down. It's competitive edge. It's basically friends. You leave the team behind, right? It's just it's one of the most amazing things in the world, having a team like that you spend all the time with. Mates of yours, good mates from when you've grown up. Got kids now, and all the kids are friends, so you leave that behind. But then you leave the physical side as well, because you do take it for granted. I mean, we train obviously every day. We're in the gym every day. We get paid to be in the gym. Yeah. Ultimately. Nice. Which is always quite nice. And it's hard. We get absolutely worked, but and on the pitch, you're there every day. So you lose those three things actually. But actually, there's no reason to lose the physical one. You don't. That for me that's one you can control. You can maybe control the competition side depending on what you go into. What I do now is competitive and I want to win, right? Yeah, so I get that. It's a different team. Yeah. But again, as I mentioned before, it's a good team with good people. So it's slightly different, but it's still there. So if you can try and manage, for me personally, those three things. Yeah. But if I gave up on the physical side, then I'd lose something which was a huge part of my life, and that then throw me off. So that's one of the reasons I train. And the other reason is it's part family. My kids have seen me play, and if I just give up and just turn into a mess, it'll be a bit of a shame. So that's another driver for me, is so that they see me as strong. Go to the gym. They always see me in the morning, on a Saturday and Sunday morning early. I go to the gym early at home, and they're like, "You going to the gym?" I'm like, "Yeah, go to the gym at 6:30 or whatever." Yeah. And them seeing me do that is important. I think. For
sure, yeah, absolutely. They learn from that. I think kids more from the action than they do from what you say to them. Well, at least mine doesn't listen to me anyway.
Well, they see me go and they say, "Quite, that's early," and they see me go out early in the morning in the weekdays and go to the gym, and I think that's important. I think for me personally, it's I've always been like it. So for probably. If it's a good reason or not, I want to feel and look like I always have. Yeah. And then also it's a way of just, sort of decompressing a bit, to be honest. Yeah. And I don't do training wise, like I do more weight training than anything else because, one, it's what I've always done, but also it's like, it's quite nice pushing heavy weights. I saw a fun stat. It was, if you push over 100 kg on bench, you're in the top 1% in the world, or maybe lower than that, to be honest. Yeah. So even that sort of stuff is, I just want to be strong, basically. I want to be able to lift things when I need to. I need to be able to run away from things if I need to. These kind of simple, basic things. Yeah. I try and just look after myself in that way, really, with no real target. You asked there about a goal. No, not really. I looked at doing a few competitions and stuff, and actually,
we've kind of done it before.
I was like, yeah. I mean, it'd be quite fun, I suppose. But I mean, I'm playing this weekend and playing a bit of vets rugby on the weekend. But that's about it, really. I just want to stay in shape so that I can function well. Yeah.
It's interesting, even though you've kind of come from this kind of professional elite background in sport, some of the things you're saying still resonate, I think, with myself and other people as well, because why do you go to the gym and lift weights? Because it makes you feel better, you feel good. But then also something you said about the camaraderie you had in rugby and how you kind of recreated that a little bit in the business world as well to kind of keep you motivated. And I do find I enjoy the times when I go to the gym and it's quite solo and it's pushing yourself. But at the same time, sometimes you play paddle or another sport where there's a couple other people involved. There's something in that, even though you might be competing against each other, there's still something that motivates you and gives you that little bit of an adrenaline boost, right? So
yeah, I mean, I've got there's a few guys at I work now, and we all go to the gym. Well, I don't think they probably did go before, so maybe I've forced them to go. But I said, look, I'm going, and there's 4 of us now that go early morning before we start, and it is good when you're there because I'm getting to them about chucking a bit more on, or like a bit more weights, and they, I think they turn up, so they must be enjoying it a bit. So but yeah, you're right. I think having that, I mean, I was in a gym with 25 30 guys, it was a different vibe to 4 of you. But no, doing it together is always better. I suppose that might be, if I didn't have that kind of gym now where I'm going, maybe I would have to look for, I don't know what I'd do, to be honest, but like a pairs or a competition pairs, a High Rocks pairs or whatever, I don't know. But so far, I mean, I'm not really a runner. That's a problem. So the High Rocks events are too much running for me.
Yeah, I tend to avoid it if I can. Like short distance, keep it short, yeah.
Yeah, short for me is good.
Short sprints, done.
Short, yeah. No, 1K every 10 minutes is way too much.
Good stuff. I guess like going through, in sport, in rugby, you would have been going through a lot of micro injuries. You would probably had fatigue to battle through, maybe even, injuries and other things. And also failures. I mean, things sometimes go well, sometimes they don't. How has that helped you sort of build mental and physical resilience, I guess? And has that helped you, as you've moved on from rugby?
I mean, sport is very good at humbling you, to be honest. You feel like you're flying. I mean, injury-wise, I don't need to touch wood anymore. I suppose I probably do because I'm playing this week. But I was always okay. I had a few over the years, which were, ironically, my last game ever, I got one of my worst injuries ever. So that was never ideal. Oh, no. I ruptured my rotator cuff in my shoulder. So that was a bit unfortunate. But no, typically, injury-wise, I was okay. It's kind of part of the course, really. It was very unlikely to go through without a few bad ones over sort of 18 years, to be honest. But actually, the failures are more around, losing. I was joking last night, actually, because I'm playing with Stefan Armitage, who played for Toulon in 2014. We lost the final against Toulon in Cardiff. And I said to him, we got hammered, to be honest. Like, we were nowhere near it. They were unbelievable and their squad was unbelievable. And then we lost the Premiership final the week after. So we lost 2 finals in 2 weeks. Yeah. So we spent the whole year building towards, so from June basically to May, to win. And you get yourself to 2 finals and you lose both.
And that's got to be more of a mental challenge in a way than physically you may be beaten up through the process, or maybe hard going, but is it the mental side that actually is harder because you kind of, oh my God, I can't believe we did that after all that work? Is that the
to be honest, it was
the challenge?
That hurt, that one for sure. I mean, the Toulon one, you're like, they were a better team. You can look at that, and then you go to Twickenham and you play in the next one. It's like, oh wow, we lost in extra time as well. Last play, it was like, oh. So, but but then the year after we won the European Cup, and then we won the final the year after, and then we won it again in 2016. So, you know, it's part of the game. You know, you know, we had to go through that period where we lost to really understand what it meant and what we needed. You know, and that's what I think. Go flip back to business there a little bit.
Go for it.
You know, people don't want to fail or they don't want to make mistakes, and actually, it's the only way. There is no way to. If you're not pushing, if you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing hard enough. And I'm very careful in that, because obviously, as you know, regulatory world, you can't make mistakes in certain ways.
It makes it trickier for sure.
In my mind, is that you know, do we win the European Cup in 15 if we, you know, if we don't have that humbling moment? Maybe. But then, do we go on to win it in 16 again, and then build a team which actually was probably one of the best team in the world for that period between 15 and 19, 15, 20. That 5-year period, we were, you know, unbelievable. But then, do you get that without the humbling of losses? And again, it's embracing them, because it was tough. And we sat around. I remember looking at my first day of pre-season the year after, and we were saying, right, well, last year was a shame, first of all. But what are we going to learn from it? And that, I mean, we never stopped doing that, because in 2022, we came back up to the Premiership after we were relegated for salary cap breach. We came back up. We lost in the final in 22 against Leicester. And we had the same conversation. So you bear in mind, like, the team has just won kind of everything you can win. And then we come back up, we get to the final the first year, we lose. And the next year we said, right, well, why did we lose? It's because we didn't have enough of a toolkit to be able to go to. So we were quite sort of, we had one plan and that was it. So we decided to go, no, we need more than that. Like, we need to be able to flip between a few, because we weren't enough, basically, to win. And then we won it again. We won it in the year after. So it's having that ability to have hard conversations, uncomfortable ones, about, you know, your opinion on things, and actually be uncomfortable. That's what I think. And when we're at our best, we're having uncomfortable conversations more often. Because no one wants to say, you know, what they really think about why we lost, because they're like, well, you know, I'll get shot down. So being able to do that is important.
So, like, kind of suck it up, be resilient, and actually come back. Like, just, you accepted it, it's happened, but what can we learn from this? How do we move on? I mean, a lot of things you say there, you can kind of relate to some of these things that a lot of business people and entrepreneurs say. I can't remember, one of the, I think it might be Mark Cuban, talks about, you know, in business, you only have to hit the home run once to actually be very successful. But in sports, on a regular basis, and it's constant failures. And I think your point earlier, where you just said, you know, you shouldn't be too afraid to fail, because you've got to keep failing, as that's where you learn the most, sort of progress forward. So yeah, great thoughts. So I guess for every athlete, whether by choice or not, reaches a point where, you know, that's kind of the end, and they have to kind of move on from there. You know, how does that feel emotionally, or how did you cope with that? You know, were you ready? Did you feel like you wanted to carry on, or?
I think for me it was, I mean, it come down to, so what was I doing it for? To be honest, and you have to weigh up the risks and the rewards. I mean, it's not, you know, it's a tough game, it's a hard game, it's dangerous. It's not as dangerous as some sports or some, you know, occupations, but it is dangerous. And you have to, you know, why am I playing? So the rewards were, you know, you've got time with your family, because you can't train 9 to 5, so you're at home a lot. You get them seeing you play, so there's all that benefit to it. If you're playing, when you're involved, or you're not just a number, you're engaged in it. If you're winning, and obviously you're getting paid handsomely to do it. So they're all the reasons too. The minute that changes, and that could be any of those things. So if I'm, and actually risks injury wise, if you're fit. So I decided that actually, well, I was 32, you know, I could have carried on, to be honest. I could have gone to probably 33, 34 quite easily. But then, you know, would I have been involved as involved as I have been? You know, things happen and you start to play less and less, you get more injured, these things happen. And that would then impact some of the other things, right? So, you know, the salary expectations, you know, how involved you are, how the kids watching you play, like, that all started to then go, right, it needs to make sense, basically, to marry up the risk and the reward. And so I decided that actually the game had given me a hell of a lot. And it was the time for me to finish on a high, to be honest. I took a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
So my last game was at Twickenham when we won the Premiership. And I can take that with me now, and that's me, that's mine forever. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have to stay and be on the bench or not involved. And I just didn't want that personally. I just didn't want that really. So then it came to the other side was, okay, well that's all well and good, but you need to have something to go to. So I have always been intrigued about off-field things. I did my degree when I was 19. I started that in psychology.
Nice.
I then spent time in London at a psychometric agency, just helping them build products, which is quite interesting. I spent some time in football academies, so West Ham and Fulham, working with their under 18s and 23s leadership group and trying to help them. I qualified as an executive coach, and then I started going into the finance world, which is what I'm doing now. So around around COVID, I was fascinated by it. Yeah. Mainly while the oil price was negative. I was like, I couldn't get my head around that. So I was like, that's quite interesting. Probably want to find out about that. So then I spent the next 2 years at the firm I'm with now. Yeah. And then it got to an interesting spot at the end where, because as I say, I was looking at maybe finishing playing. I don't want to say retiring because it sounds a bit wrong. So I said, right, I don't think I want to play anymore. What can I do? So then I had the football, the manager that I worked with a lot at West Ham. He then he was Bristol City manager, first team. So I did some work with them last year. Then it was a friend of mine had a consultancy. So they deliver group workshops for companies. So I helped him. And then Dowgate, the financial company, offered me a 2-day role. So I then had a plan to then weigh up against. So I had 3 different roles, which de-risked a little bit. One of them might go well, none of them might, but one of them, 3, hopefully will go well. So that stabilised that. I decided not to play. And then since that point, it's been sort of an exercise in massaging that and seeing which one goes best. But I think it was that moment where, for me, it was not going to be a goer to just turn up and, get paid to go to the gym and not play. I just didn't want that. And then it's like, well, I need to find something which gives me, each of those 3 roles I went into gives me that purpose and the people I want to do it with. So I was incredibly fortunate to have that. And that meant that I could, say thank you to the club on good terms. And I love going back. I go back to the training ground whenever I can. Of course. And there's no one was on the wrong, I say this a fair bit, on the wrong side of value. So there's there's value in the middle, and you're on the wrong side or on the right side. And trying to be as close to that line as possible is obviously the game.
Of course,
So, there's none of that with the club. So I can always go back, happily. And we all ended up in the middle. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was perfect. So it doesn't always happen.
I can imagine.
When I say that, some people they find it quite interesting, the right side of value. But it's important for me to do that for sure.
And do you think the ups and downs of the sport, in terms of you mentioned having the highs and having the failures, has that helped you in the process of like building and evolving this next phase of your life in terms of your career? And like, because at the beginning you didn't really know exactly what you'd be doing, or whether you'd end up at Dowgate or doing something else, but because you'd been through those kind of difficult situations in the sport, did that kind of give you the right mindset to help you do that more easily than maybe perhaps if you hadn't? Or?
I think so. I mean, I think someone asked me yesterday, actually. They said about, have you found it? And I said, to be honest, it's been 2.5 years of understanding. I've done my exams, my financial exams and bits and pieces. That's fine. But actually, no, understanding, everything about the business and like getting into every little sort of crack you can and just figuring out, well, how does this place function? And then having the confidence to say, okay, yes, I've only been here 2.5 years, but I see things a little bit differently. And that's fine. But you can't really say that from the start. So I think I've always wanted to get to this point, but you need to then spend the 2.5 years to understand it properly, to make sure you're right? Because you have a sense of things. So when the first time I went into Dalgate, I had a sense that this was how it should run, or how it should look, really, from a people point of view. But you need to be, you need to be sure. You need to feel of it properly.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But no, and I think one thing in rugby is you say things you think. So it doesn't always go down well. So you have to be quite careful with that as well. I mean, it's because there's no time in sport. Yeah. Like if you don't say what you think and there's something wrong, then you lose.
Yeah,
there is no, you might be wrong, you might be right, but you have to say it, because if you don't, then you basically find out on the weekend. So it's a very open, honest environment most of the time. I'd say in sport. I mean, it wasn't always like that, but when we were humming, when we were firing all cylinders, God, we were direct. Do you know what I mean? Like we said what we thought, and we challenged each other, and we disagreed. And I think that is such an important sort of way of being in a business, because if I can disagree with you and we can leave, I don't resent someone's opinions. I sort of embrace them and challenge them. Then if we can have an environment that's doing that across the business, and we're not doing it because we don't like you, we're doing it because we're trying to get better. That mindset for me is important. And again, it's hard to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it perhaps business a little bit more political as well? So there's a lot of emotions to deal with, a lot of different characters from different backgrounds.
It's very. I mean, that's probably the biggest challenge. I think you've got typically. I mean, any kind of person. To be honest, I mean, an office is like between sort of, I don't know, like obviously male, female, between the ages of 20 and 60, 70. You've got different responsibilities. It's just such a challenge. But at the same time, it doesn't mean it's impossible. It means it takes more time to lay the foundations. And we did again just recently a culture definition exercise, which is what I've never really been on board with is the values set from the top, and they basically, it's like every company in the world has them, right, on their missions or whatever. They're set from the C-suite or management, and everyone else doesn't really have an input. They just see them and they say, "Oh, that's me." So what we at Saracens, we did a lot of this where we defined them ourselves. So everyone in the training ground got involved to define what they actually meant, and that's incredibly important, because you then have ownership across the whole business. So we had 70 people do this exercise where they spent an hour and a half talking about each of the values and what they mean to them in a few different questions. And then we disseminated that down into 3 statements under each. Now, importantly, everyone has been involved. They've had a voice, they've been heard, and they've contributed to the way that we're going to behave in the office or for the company. So that's the first step for me, is having the understanding that this is what's expected of me, not around context. There's no strategy there. It's purely around how do I behave? What is expected of me as an individual, as a person. And then you can then refer to it. You see it on the wall when you walk out the door, and you know that you've been a part of it. It's not just been stuck there. And it's easier in a smaller business, because bigger businesses it's very hard. It's. But to be honest, well, that's fine, because we're a small business. We want to do well, so we take what we can. We haven't got the name or the brand or the balance sheet or anything, but all we do have is a connected group of people that can do well and actually outperform our expectations because of that connection.
Makes sense.
So as much as you can. I mean, the reason I like it is it's the same size as the training ground, really, people-wise.
Okay.
So 70 people. You've got 35 first team. You've got about 15 academy. You've got staff. You've got coaches. So it's about 70, 75. So it's a perfect size to do it. Not to say it's not achievable over 100, but it starts to creak a bit, and you get the silos you talked about.
Yeah, of course,
But if you build it from a strong start point, then as you grow, like we said before about how you scale as businesses, it's having the foundation strong so that you can hire against them. If you hire the right people, talent for me there's a lot of talented people out there, but the characters are
and how they fit with the rest of the team.
So what is it that we are, and then how do we bring people into it? They may not have the best CV. So I'm not about looking at CVs a lot of the time. They're obviously good to refer to. But it's, what is the character like? How do they add to what we are? And again, we've been falling foul of that before. I
think it's easy to do. It's very hard to choose the right talent. For sure.
So it's not I'm not saying we have the fix, but it's, yeah, if you hire against your values and your characteristics, then more than, you know, get them right more than you get them wrong. Although it's not a fine science there, but it helps. Yeah.
So we just wanted to go back to something we were talking about earlier, just in terms of maintaining fitness after sport. You do see some people stay fit after they finish their sport, and some people fall off the wagon. I guess part of that is because you will have a lot of experts around you guiding you through the way to train, the way to eat, and giving you suggestions and all that kind of thing during that process as a sporting person. But you obviously don't necessarily have that when you leave. How important is it for you, or how many things have you taken from that, or do you kind of create your own methods and routines and things, or is a lot of it fall back to what you learned from that period?
I think it's probably the latter, to be honest. I think we trained in a certain way, and sport thinks it's a lot of people think sport is very innovative, and we try and find niche ways to, like the marginal gains, the 1% things, and actually no, we just kept it very simple. You push and you push the level, but we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Like if you're strong, you're powerful, and you're fit and you're fast, like you don't need to find all these special ways to do it. Like it's very simple. So the way we trained pretty much for the last 10 years of my career was very sort of standardized. Like the gym programs were very similar. We changed up the exercises to hit different things, but very much a lower body day looked like X. It was a double leg and a single leg, and then probably some posterior chain stuff and some hamstring. And a sled. That's basically it.
It shouldn't be complicated anyway for anyone. I think they overcomplicate the whole thing in the health and wellness anyway. But.
So I look, now I go to the gym and I was like, what do you do at the gym? I'm like, well, I do a lower body day. And what do you do? I'm like, well, I do a double leg, I do a single leg, I do a posterior chain, and I do a sled. That's basically what I do. And they say, well, what do you do for running? I'm like, well, I don't particularly want to run a 5K. I don't enjoy it, to be honest, or a 10K or a marathon. So I still do my pitch runs. I do 150s, I do 50 returns, I do 22 returns, they're like, why do you do that? Because I quite like it, to be honest. It reminds me of what I used to do, and it gets you fit. Obviously it burns a lot of calories as well, that's helpful. I very much train the way I always have, and I don't need to have a program now, because in my head I know exactly what a upper body day looks like. I know what a strength day and pre-season, I know what a loading day looks like. So it's I suppose it's in here, and I just, if I do lower body, it looks like this. If I do a push, it looks like this, or pull, or I do off feets as well, so rowing machine and bike and things. Again, programs that I've done forever, to be honest. And again, it's not really for any goal or anything. I just quite like it, to be honest.
Keep in shape. That's a good enough goal. Keep healthy. Live longer.
Hopefully, exactly that. And actually, another thing about why I train is to look after my joints that I've just given a pasting for 18 years. To be honest, knees, ankles, shoulders, hips. If you turn off all the muscles around them, then they're under pressure. They're probably not in a good state anyway. If I'm honest, they're probably a bit stuffed. So at least help them by firing up the muscles around them. Because they need all the help they can get, typically, from anyone that's played rugby. They've asked a lot of questions of the joints. Yeah.
So you talked there about, obviously you've taken a lot of things forward from your training and recovery from your rugby days. Is there anything from that period where you're like, nah, not going to bother again, never going to do that again?
Probably is a few bits actually. It's probably the fitness test we did at the start of every season. At the time of pre-season. I won't be doing that again. No, that's not fun. And the 4-4-minute runs, we used to do that a lot as well. That was pretty savage. Bleep tests, things like that. Anytime I hear that bleep, I'm like, my son did it as a warm-up the other day, and I was like, what's he doing? Coaches, I was like, that is so bleak.
I remember doing that at school. I didn't enjoy that one.
So there's some bits, but to be honest, most of it, like even the runs, or the pitch runs we do, at the time I'm sitting there going, oh God, I'm not looking forward to this. But actually now I'm like, I actually do it, I want to do it. It's different. It just changes really. I'd always be dreading it. Like on a Thursday before a Friday fitness session in pre-season, it was like, because it was typically Tuesday and Friday were our heavy running days. So on a Monday night, you'd done a tough day, but you hadn't done the running. And then Thursday was the same. So I'd always sit there and go, oh, we've got this tomorrow. But now I actually search for it, because it's like, I sometimes think, do I go down and just get involved in a session and just see how I get on? But I'm like, nah.
Yeah. Just stay fit. That'll do.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So obviously stepping into business and doing business development in the financial world is, quite a big change from rugby. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what are the biggest changes or differences you found between the performance culture in the business world that you're operating in now versus the performance culture before in rugby?
I think it's the single biggest difference is it's a bit, the feedback loop's one, but actually it's more the conversion. So, typically it can take, sometimes it's easier than others, but sometimes it takes, a year to win any business, at all. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 6 months. So the sort of the variance really of feedback and success is something to, initially it was, it's okay, it'll be a couple of weeks or a month maybe. It's actually a lot longer than that sometimes, depending on the business you're trying to do. And obviously in sport you get that on a weekend, on a daily basis, so you know where you are.
Yeah.
So really the difference has been trying to contextualize that, I'd say, and say, and actually the new role I'm trying to help with at the minute around the strategy side is helps with that, because you've got the media and you've got different time spans on them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are a year long, maybe 2. Some of them are more short term. So it's really for me, the difference has been understanding what takes what length of time, if that makes sense. So, and actually being okay with that. Yeah, because it's not easy, to be honest. It's not an easy game to be in, but it's incredibly rewarding when you get it. So just really trying to plot expectations on timing. Really, I think it's probably the big thing.
Yeah, I think you touched on a few things there. It's that resilience and that willingness to, I guess, be consistent over time. You were doing that in rugby, but you now do that in this, and it's in some ways even harder because it takes a little bit longer to get there. So from a mental perspective, I guess it's quite draining. And so where are you in terms of your competitive edge? So you would have had a lot of, I guess, been driven to be very competitive in the rugby space. Do you still have that when it comes to business, personal goals, even your training for that matter? Yeah,
I think I'm probably... they probably, Dowgate in particular, they're probably a bit frustrated. Sometimes I come in, I'm like, well, no, we're doing it. We need to do this. We need to do this. We need to do it now, kind of thing. I'm competitive around basically trying to. I don't know if it's competitive with myself actually, or actually everyone out there. Obviously, we're competing against other bigger firms, right? So that's our. Of course. Yeah. So I think we should be punching above our weight, and we should continue to. I think I am. I maintain that competitive edge. I think. And that's probably why when I see certain things, I'm like, come on, you've got to be better, kind of thing. That's fine. But it's that high performance environment kind of thing. You hear high performance is probably the biggest buzzword of the last few years. Everyone says it, but I just see it as I try and find a different way of putting it, really, because it's ultimately that for me is purpose and engagement. If a group has purpose and engagement, then because in the middle of a normal circle you'd have high performance or high performing environment or whatever. So I just try and say, right, well, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is how I impact that. So I'm competitive against myself. So I'm saying, well, this is what I've said I'll do. How quickly can I do it, basically? And then training wise, I don't really have any massive goals to do. As I say, I just want to function. I want to be strong, and I want to, be able to run around if I need to. So it's more. Consistent effort, to be honest. I saying that I am playing on the weekend and I want to win, to be honest. But we were saying last night, some of the guys, we good to win, to be honest. But I played in Australia in the summer, and we didn't win, but it was a good trip.
Good fun. Yeah, and I'm sure you're still training way higher than most people, certainly at your age and younger.
Do you know? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I suppose so. Yeah.
Well, what will be? I suppose what will be hard and difficult for you, and the bar will be probably higher from your past experience versus someone who never competed at that level. I think that's probably the big one.
Yeah, probably true. I mean, my start point at this age, is higher. Probably, definitely, I'd say.
Yeah.
But that's just everyone's sort of standard. Everyone has a sort of their level, right? And I think that level does move.
Yeah.
And from a somewhat simple start for someone who doesn't train, that their bar can move quite quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
whereas when you get to sort of someone who's played sport or that level, it can move much slower. Actually, either way.
Yeah.
So you get the gains at the start, to be honest. So if you start getting going, you can see some massive changes quite quickly, and then it does start to slow.
Has there been anything where you felt a little bit frustrated because, I guess, for example, your strengths maybe dropped back a little bit since you were training? And, partly that be age, partly because you're not doing it to the same level as before. Because, I mean, I'm not operating at that level at all, but, I do find, there are ups and downs. Sometimes you feel like you're progressing more than other times. Sometimes I can do more pull-ups or more push-ups than I could last week, and other times like, what happened? I can't do the last 3. So I think it really varies, and I guess your tiredness, how you're feeling, all that kind of stuff. But do you ever get feel a little bit demotivated by that, or you're kind of like, no, actually, I'm good?
No, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, no, not really. To be honest, some days I can lift a certain weight. Sometimes it's not, but actually just having the time and attention, the weight under it or pushing it or what have you. It's not about how much is on there. It's am I doing it?
How you feel afterwards as well. Yeah.
Have I gone in there and given it a go here, and I've just gone in there to tick a box. No, I've gone in there to try and push some weights, basically. Heavy. If I can't quite push it, as long as I'm failing or on the borderline of failing, that's where I want to be. Whether that's 120 or 110 or 100, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm at that point. So the last set is always one that I fail on. Near enough fail. That's fine. To be honest. The same in the fitness side and sleds and all that stuff. Is have I walked out of here, pretty cooked, and if the answer is yes, then that's fine. And sometimes that might be after, 4 loops of a circuit or 5 or 6 or 3. It does as long as I walk out that way, and then I'm happy.
Just depends. So in terms of longevity, what's your kind of definition of that from a mental and physical side? Whether that's in fitness and health or even in business.
It's a good question, to be fair. It's. I think longevity in physical, on the physical side. I think it's just keeping the body moving, keeping the muscles activated and strong, making your body resilient, to be honest. And when you're, for example, like if you have to run, I say it a few times, but if you have to run to get a train or run to get a bus, or you have to stop something falling or whatever it is, for me that's being able to do that for as long as possible is important. So I just think that the longevity in training is, you're always going to fluctuate down a little bit as you get older, for sure, but just the act of doing it is important to make sure that you are resilient, and that then gives you that longevity. On the business side, I think it's continue to be engaged. If there's ever a point, don't get me wrong, you have points where it's tough and you're like, I started last week. I just left early. I was like, I can't anymore.
Need a break.
But that can happen,
Sure.
But if you're continuously waking up in the morning and going, God, not looking forward to this, that's probably not the place for you or the people. So I think in terms of longevity of businesses, be honest, say what you think, be in a place that gives you purpose and engagement with people that you want to do it with. And that for me it then keeps you going, keeps you motivated, and actually having an impact obviously is important as well. If you feel like you're not having it, if I felt like I wasn't having an impact anymore, then I'd be looking elsewhere, because it's so important to have that, for me anyway, to have that engagement, and have that impact. If I don't feel like I'm making the business better, or we are misaligned on so my perspective is misaligned, then then I'll have to look for something else, because it's incredibly important, really, to be going in the direction that you want to, which is a growing one. You know, it's the good thing about the Dagon is entrepreneurial, so it's very much forward thinking about growing and doing things the right way.
Yeah, of course.
So that fits with what I want to be doing. Because again, in rugby, we started as a group of, well, a lot of us were 15, and we grew, and we was part of a team that was built and successful.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do that again. You know, that's why I left at 32 and I didn't stay, because I was like, right, I want to actually do that again. You know, I want to hopefully build and be a part of something which is grown and been successful.
Yeah.
So this is like, you know, part 2 of that kind of story. And there might be a part 3, depending on how long it takes.
Always, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, that for me is the longevity is really around how engaged and how much purpose you've got.
Yeah, it makes sense. I had a conversation with a very successful entrepreneur once, and I think they described this whole thing with training, keeping healthy, and business actually as, you think of it more as a marathon with lots of little sprints, and that ability to sustain over time. And you're going to need to recover at points. You're going to need to sprint at some points, but it's a long journey. So don't, in some ways, not even rush it. Just keep progressing forward, and that's.
I think they're definitely not separate. You know, that's the key thing here. Obviously, I've described them differently in terms of the separation, but there's so much crossover between the two, because you know, it's discipline at the end of the day. You know, the only time that I can train is at 6 a.m. is during the week. Yeah. So I have to make a conscious effort to get out of bed at 5. Yeah. Which is tough.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I can train. Yeah. So that discipline of saying, right, no, I am going to get up, I'm going to go and train. And actually, it's probably not the most important part, but everyone knowing that you've done that is, you know, they're like, you're mad, you know, like what you're doing. And actually, they don't train during the week. It's like, no. Like, you set a standard. And again, I said for the kids, like, they have to, it's really a standard setting thing. Yeah. Physically, yes, it gives me a lot. I like to feel and you know, look like I look after myself. But really, it's just setting a standard, to be honest. That no one else is. There's rarely anyone up in London at 5 o'clock. When I get in there, it's dead. It's dead. Yeah. So you're winning basically just by being ahead of everyone else. And I'm not about. I do read a lot about you know, you've got 3, 4, 5 parts of your day, and you should spend it doing. No, actually, your sleep's important. It's very important. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to get a certain amount of sleep, but actually, if you can, you know, be working on something when most people are asleep, then there's something to that, I think. Because there's not enough time in the day anyway, to be honest. I run out of time so quick. So if I didn't train then, I'd be absolutely stuffed. Yeah. No, I had a conversation with someone the other day, actually, which was very similar on this. Like, it's about being consistent in the end and just doing it. Because actually the hardest part of training isn't necessarily the training. It's actually that bit where you have to get out of bed, or you have to say to yourself, I really can't bother to go and train right now. But actually that 15 minutes before, getting yourself there. But once you're there and you start doing things, it gets easier, I find. Even if you train yourself hard, it feels better. You feel like more motivated. You've got to be there. Just getting there is the hard bit. And if you can get into that habit, I think you benefit a lot. So I think I'm on to my final question, actually. So if you could tell your younger self one piece of advice that they could take forward now after all these years of rugby and now business, what would it be? God, I didn't read this in the prep. I should have thought about this. No, I think respect is easy to lose and hard to win, to be honest. Very wise words, yeah. I'd say that, spend your time earning respect, and how important it is. Because if you're respected in whatever it is you do, then you know that goes a hell of a long way to how well you do. Because it's a world is, as much as everyone's trying to tell you that AI is here to take over, it's a people relationship world. Totally agree. Yeah. Whatever it is that you do, you know, spend your time earning respect, because it stands for a huge amount. And I think and if you don't have it, it becomes very difficult. And what that means to different people is, is very different. But yeah, for me, it's simple things. You know, be on time, do what you say you're going to do, give time to people when they need you. It's very simple stuff, but if you do that and you work incredibly hard, you don't have to get everything right all the time. But if you do those key things, you earn respect, and people want to be around you. Then that is helpful, or they want to help when you need them. There's so many connotations to it, to be honest. So yeah, I think a simple message would be focus on respect, earning respect. Yeah. So, yeah, on the spot, that's why I answer.
Yeah, no, that's very wise words. Very wise words, Jackson. Thanks so much for doing this. It's been great to chat to you. I'm already looking forward to our next chat. Thanks for coming. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.